You're sitting at a red light in your 10-year-old Honda Accord. The paint has a few scratches. The interior isn't anything special. It runs perfectly fine, gets you where you need to go, and hasn't required anything beyond routine maintenance in years. A BMW X5 pulls up next to you. It's gleaming. The driver glances over and you catch something in the look. Maybe it's your imagination. Maybe it's not. But for a moment, you feel a twinge of something. Embarrassment. Inadequacy. The sense that you should be further along by now. That your car says something about you that you don't want it to say. You start doing mental math. Could you afford a nicer car? You could probably swing the payment. It would be tight, but manageable. You'd have to cut back somewhere else. But isn't that what everyone does? Isn't that just how it works? The light turns green. The BMW accelerates away. You follow behind in your Accord, still thinking about it. Later that night, you're at dinner with friends. Someone mentions they just bought a new car. Everyone congratulates them. They show pictures. The conversation turns to features and packages and how they got a great deal. You stay quiet. You don't mention that you're still driving the same car you bought during the last administration. When you get home, you look at your car in the driveway. You think about what people must assume when they see it. You think about the coworker who drives a Mercedes and makes roughly the same salary you do. You wonder what you're doing wrong. Here's what you don't know. You're not doing anything wrong. You might be doing the one thing right that most people get catastrophically wrong. That BMW at the stoplight? There's roughly a 70% chance it's financed or leased. The average payment on a new luxury vehicle in 2026 exceeds $1,000 monthly. The driver might look successful, but statistically, they're more likely to be stressed about money than you are. Your Accord, paid off and invisible, represents something the BMW never will. Financial freedom that doesn't require anyone else's approval to exist. This is the inversion that most people never understand. The car you drive communicates something to the world, but what it communicates and what's actually true are almost completely unrelated. Expensive cars signal wealth. They don't prove it. In fact, the research shows they often prove the opposite. The people who actually accumulate wealth, the people who retire early, who have options, who sleep well at night, disproportionately drive cars that nobody notices. They've figured out something that takes most people decades to learn, if they ever learn it at all. The boring car isn't a compromise, it's a strategy. And in 2026, it might be the most important financial flex available. Today, I'm going to show you exactly why wealthy people refuse to buy impressive cars, what the actual math looks like when you run the numbers over a decade or a career, and why the psychology of car ownership is designed to work against your financial interests. By the end, you'll never look at a luxury car in traffic the same way again. Before I break down the specific reasons wealthy people drive boring cars, let me establish the research foundation that makes this pattern undeniable. Thomas Stanley spent over 20 years studying millionaires across America. His research found that the most common car brand among millionaires is Toyota. Not BMW, not Mercedes, not Lexus, Toyota. The second most common is Honda. The third is Ford. According to his data, the median price millionaires pay for a vehicle is $31,367. That's below the average transaction price for a new vehicle in America, which exceeded $48,000 in 2025. A 2025 study from Ramsey Solutions surveyed over 10,000 millionaires and found the same pattern. The top 3 car brands driven by millionaires are Toyota, Honda, and Ford. Luxury brands don't crack the top 5. Experian automotive data shows that 61% of people earning over $250,000 annually drive Toyotas, Hondas, or Fords. The people earning the most are not buying the most expensive cars. Meanwhile, research shows that 8% of people earning under $100,000 drive luxury vehicles. They're stretching to afford cars that people earning 3 times as much don't bother buying. The pattern is consistent and counterintuitive. The people who look wealthy and the people who are wealthy are largely separate populations. The car in someone's driveway tells you almost nothing about their net worth. If anything, an impressive car is a slight negative indicator, suggesting the owner prioritizes appearance over accumulation. Understanding why this pattern exists requires understanding both the mathematics of car ownership and the psychology that makes people ignore those mathematics. Let me show you the math that wealthy people understand intuitively. The average monthly payment on a new car in 2026 is $772, according to Edmunds data. For luxury vehicles, that average exceeds $1,100 monthly. Let's compare two people over a 15-year period. The first person, Michael, buys or leases new vehicles every 4 years. He wants something respectable, something that reflects his professional success. His average monthly payment is $850. He views this as normal, as what responsible adults do, as the cost of having reliable transportation. The second person, David, buys 3-year-old Toyotas with cash and drives them for 8 years. His average monthly cost for vehicle ownership, including depreciation, maintenance, and repairs, is approximately $275. The monthly difference is $575. That's $6,900 annually. Over 15 years, Michael spends $103,500 more than David on transportation, but the actual cost is much higher because money spent can't compound. If David invested that $575 monthly difference in a diversified index fund earning 7% average returns, he would accumulate approximately $173,000 over 15 years. Extend the timeline to 30 years, a typical career length, and the gap becomes staggering. The monthly difference invested at 7% returns for 30 years becomes approximately $703,000. $703,000. That's the actual cost of driving impressive cars instead of boring cars over a career. Michael's nicer cars didn't cost him $850 monthly. They cost him $703,000 in retirement wealth. The payments were just how the cost was extracted. This is the math that wealthy people understand. Every dollar spent on a depreciating asset is a dollar that can't compound in an appreciating asset. The car payment isn't just money leaving your account. It's future wealth being permanently sacrificed. The mathematics get worse when you examine how depreciation actually works. A new car loses approximately 20 to 25% of its value the moment you drive it off the lot. A $55,000 vehicle becomes a $41,000 vehicle in the time it takes to reach the first stoplight. By the end of year 1, depreciation typically reaches 30%. Your $55,000 car is now worth $38,500. You've lost $16,500 in 12 months. By year 3, most vehicles have lost 40 to 50% of their original value. Your $55,000 car is worth $27,000 to $33,000. This depreciation curve is steepest in the first 3 years. The person who buys new vehicles every 3 or 4 years is perpetually riding the most expensive part of the depreciation curve. They absorb maximum loss on every vehicle they own. The person who buys 3-year-old vehicles and drives them for another 5 to 7 years is riding the flattest part of the depreciation curve. They let someone else absorb the steep early losses and own the vehicle during the years when it loses value slowly. Let me show you how this works in practice. A 2026 Toyota Camry costs approximately $32,000 new. That same Camry, 3 years old with 35,000 miles, costs approximately $19,000. Someone already absorbed $13,000 in depreciation. The person who buys the 3-year-old Camry and drives it until it has 120,000 miles will experience perhaps $5,000 to $7,000 in additional depreciation over 7 years of ownership. Their annual depreciation cost is roughly $700 to $1,000. The person who buys new and trades in at 3 years experiences $13,000 in depreciation over 3 years. Their annual depreciation cost is over $4,300. Same car, same reliability, same transportation value. 4 times the depreciation cost for the person who needs to have something new. Wealthy people understand that depreciation is a wealth transfer. Every dollar of depreciation leaves your balance sheet and disappears. It doesn't go to the car. It doesn't go to the dealer. It simply ceases to exist. The vehicle that was worth $55,000 is now worth $38,000, and the $17,000 difference evaporated. The boring 3-year-old Honda minimizes this wealth transfer. The impressive new BMW maximizes it. The choice between them is a choice about how much wealth you're willing to destroy for the privilege of having something newer. Now let me address the psychology that makes people ignore this math, because the math alone doesn't explain why so many smart people make poor vehicle decisions. Cars occupy a unique position in American consumer psychology. They're visible, they're mobile, they go everywhere you go. Unlike your house, which stays in one place, your car accompanies you to work, to social events, to every public interaction. This visibility makes cars powerful status signals. A luxury car announces something about you before you say a word. It enters rooms before you do. It shapes first impressions with strangers, co-workers, potential clients, and romantic interests. The signaling power of cars creates intense pressure to optimize for perception rather than financial outcomes. You're not just buying transportation, you're buying an identity broadcast system. Research in consumer psychology has documented this phenomenon extensively. People consistently attribute positive characteristics to drivers of prestigious vehicles, including higher competence, greater success, and superior social status. The attributions are automatic and unconscious. This creates a genuine dilemma. If people judge you based on your car, and your car affects professional and social opportunities, isn't a nicer car actually a rational investment? Here's where the research becomes important. Studies show that the status benefits of prestigious vehicles are real, but extremely narrow. They affect first impressions with strangers. They don't affect outcomes with anyone who gets to know you, which includes everyone who actually matters to your career and relationships. Your boss knows your work quality regardless of what you drive. Your close friends know your character regardless of what you drive. Your spouse knows your financial situation regardless of what you drive. The people impressed by your car are people who don't know you. The people who know you aren't making judgments based on your vehicle. This means the status investment of an expensive car has almost zero return with the people who actually influence your life outcomes. You're paying $40,000 extra over a decade to impress strangers in parking lots who you'll never see again. Wealthy people have internalized this truth. They've stopped paying for the approval of people who don't matter. They've redirected that spending toward assets that compound rather than depreciate. Let me tell you about Jennifer to illustrate how this psychology plays out in real life. Jennifer is a 44-year-old marketing director earning $165,000 annually. She lives in suburban Atlanta. For years, she drove a series of luxury vehicles, upgrading every 3 to 4 years. BMW 3 Series, then a 5 Series, then a Mercedes GLC. Her monthly payment averaged $920. She told herself it was worth it for the professional image. Clients expected a certain presentation. Colleagues noticed what you drove. The car was an investment in her career. At 42, Jennifer attended a financial planning seminar that forced her to confront some uncomfortable numbers. Her retirement accounts held $190,000. At her income level and age, she should have had closer to $600,000. She was dramatically behind. The planner walked her through the math. Her vehicle spending over the previous 12 years totaled approximately $132,000 in payments alone, plus insurance premiums that ran 50% higher than economy vehicles, plus premium fuel, plus maintenance costs that far exceeded Honda or Toyota equivalents. If she had driven modest vehicles and invested the difference, her retirement accounts would hold approximately $480,000 instead of $190,000. The gap was almost entirely attributable to her vehicle choices. Jennifer sold her Mercedes and bought a 3-year-old Honda CR-V for $23,000 cash. Her monthly vehicle costs dropped from $920 to essentially zero beyond insurance and maintenance. She now invests that $920 monthly in her 401k and a brokerage account. In 2 years, she's added over $25,000 to her investment accounts. More importantly, she's noticed something she didn't expect. Nothing changed professionally. No client mentioned her car. No colleague commented on the switch. The professional necessity she'd believed in for years turned out to be a story she'd told herself to justify spending she enjoyed. The luxury cars had been for her, not for her career. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as you're honest about the trade-off. Jennifer hadn't been honest with herself. She'd disguised personal preference as professional requirement. The car industry is structured to exploit exactly this psychology. Leasing programs are designed to keep you perpetually paying for vehicles you'll never own. The pitch sounds reasonable. Lower monthly payment, always driving something new, no worry about depreciation. The reality is wealth destruction on autopilot. A lease payment covers the steepest depreciation years. You pay the maximum decline in value, then return the car and start over. After 5 lease cycles covering 15 years, you've made 15 years of payments and own nothing. The person who bought a modest used car in year 1, paid it off in year 4, and drove it until year 15, made payments for 3 years, and owned a vehicle for the remaining 12 years. Their total cost is a fraction of the leasing person's total cost. 22% of new car buyers in 2025 committed to 84-month loans, according to Edmunds data. 7-year financing on a depreciating asset. These buyers will be underwater, owing more than the car is worth for most of the loan term. They're trapped in vehicles they can't sell without bringing cash to the closing. The industry has also perfected the upgrade cycle. Every model year brings minor improvements marketed as major advances. The navigation system is slightly better. The driver assistance features have incremental upgrades. The styling is freshened. None of these changes affect transportation value in meaningful ways. A 2018 Accord gets you to work exactly as effectively as a 2026 Accord. The differences are aesthetic and technological, not functional. But the marketing creates perpetual dissatisfaction. Your current vehicle feels dated compared to the new release. The car that seemed perfect 2 years ago now seems deficient. The upgrade itch builds until it becomes a purchase. Wealthy people have developed immunity to this cycle. They evaluate vehicles based on functional transportation value, not marginal improvements in infotainment systems. They feel no dissatisfaction driving a vehicle that works perfectly well simply because a newer version exists. There's another dimension to the boring car strategy that rarely gets discussed. Maintenance and insurance costs correlate strongly with vehicle prestige. A brake job on a BMW 5 Series costs approximately $600 to $1,000. The same brake job on a Honda Accord costs approximately $250 to $400. An oil change on a Mercedes costs $75 to $150 at the dealer. An oil change on a Toyota costs $35 to $75. When something electronic fails on a luxury vehicle, the repair bill can reach thousands of dollars for components that would cost hundreds on a mainstream vehicle. The technology that makes luxury cars luxurious also makes them expensive to repair. Insurance follows the same pattern. The average annual insurance premium for a BMW 3 Series is approximately $2,400. The average for a Honda Accord is approximately $1,500. That's $900 annually, or $75 monthly for insurance alone. Add up maintenance and insurance differentials over a decade of ownership, and the gap easily exceeds $20,000 beyond the purchase price difference. Wealthy people calculate total cost of ownership, not purchase price. The impressive car that seems like a $15,000 premium over the boring car is actually a $50,000 premium when you include depreciation, maintenance, insurance, fuel, and opportunity cost. Let me tell you about what researchers call the millionaire next door phenomenon. because it explains why wealthy people cluster so heavily in boring vehicles. Most American millionaires are first-generation wealthy. They didn't inherit money. They built it through decades of earning, saving, and investing. 80% of millionaires fall into this category according to multiple studies. The behaviors that build wealth become habitual long before wealth arrives. The person who will eventually accumulate millions typically lived below their means at every income level. When they earned $50,000, they lived on $40,000. When they earned $150,000, they lived on $100,000. The gap between income and spending, consistently maintained and invested, eventually produced substantial wealth. This means that by the time someone has millions of dollars, frugal habits are deeply ingrained. The boring car isn't a new choice. It's the same choice they made when they earned a quarter of what they earn now. The wealth didn't change the habit because the habit was upstream of the wealth. The person who stretches to buy an impressive car at $60,000 income will stretch to buy a more impressive car at $120,000 income. The person who drives a modest car at $60,000 income will drive a modest car at $120,000 income. Behavior patterns persist across income levels. This is why lottery winners so frequently end up broke. They receive wealth without developing the behaviors that produce wealth. They spend like wealthy people are imagined to spend, rather than like wealthy people actually spend. The money disappears because the habits weren't there to preserve it. The boring car is both a cause of wealth and an effect of wealth. It's a cause because the money not spent on vehicles gets invested and compounds. It's an effect because the habits that produce wealth also produce vehicle modesty. Let me give you specific guidance on applying these principles to your own situation. If you're currently driving an expensive vehicle with a payment, calculate the true cost. Add up your monthly payment, your insurance premium, your average monthly maintenance and repair costs, and your fuel costs. Compare that total to what you'd pay for a 3-year-old Honda Accord or Toyota Camry. The difference is money that could be compounding toward your freedom. If you're considering a vehicle upgrade, apply the 10-year test. Take the price difference between the vehicle you're considering and a modest, reliable alternative. Multiply that difference by 2.5, which approximates investment returns over a decade. That's the real cost of the upgrade. Is the nicer car worth that number? If you're feeling social pressure about your modest vehicle, remember the research. The people driving impressive cars are statistically more likely to be stressed about money than you are. The perception of wealth and the reality of wealth are nearly unrelated. Your paid-off Accord is a stronger financial position than their financed BMW, regardless of what anyone assumes at a stoplight. If you're embarrassed by what your car says about you, reframe what it actually says. A boring car driven by choice says you understand the mathematics of wealth. It says you've opted out of status competition. It says you prioritize freedom over impression. It says you're playing a different game than the people around you, and your game has better odds. If you're young and establishing financial habits, this is the most important vehicle decision you'll make. The pattern you establish now will persist for decades. Start with modest vehicles and maintain that pattern as your income grows. The compounding advantage of early vehicle modesty exceeds almost any other financial choice available to you in your 20s and 30s. The person driving the BMW at the stoplight is playing a game. The game has rules. The rules say that your car reflects your success, that nicer cars indicate higher status, that visible consumption is how you demonstrate you've made it. Most people play this game without realizing they've entered it. They absorb the rules from advertising, from social observation, from the way people react to different vehicles. The game feels like reality rather than a constructed competition. Wealthy people have stepped outside the game. They've recognized that the rules serve the interests of car manufacturers, lenders, and insurance companies rather than their own interests. They've decided to optimize for outcomes rather than perceptions. The boring car is their declaration of independence from a competition that was designed for them to lose. Think about what the game actually requires. To win at the car status game, you must perpetually spend more than the people around you. but they're trying to do the same thing. The result is an arms race where everyone spends more and more, relative positions stay roughly constant, and the only winners are the companies selling vehicles and financing. The wealthy person driving the Camry has exited this arms race. They're not losing the game. They're not playing. Their refusal to compete isn't surrender, it's strategy. The money they're not spending on vehicle status is compounding elsewhere. In 10 years, they'll have options the game players don't have. In 20 years, the gap will be enormous. In 30 years, one group will be retiring comfortably while the other group is still making payments. You're still driving that Accord. The light turned green a long time ago. The BMW is gone, somewhere ahead in traffic. But now you understand something you didn't understand before. The BMW wasn't a symbol of success. It was a symbol of a choice. Probably a choice to prioritize appearance over accumulation, to play the status game, to optimize for perception rather than outcomes. Your Accord is also a symbol of a choice to opt out, a choice to let your money compound instead of depreciate, a choice to define success internally rather than through the approval of strangers at stoplights. One of these choices leads to wealth. The other leads to the appearance of wealth. They feel similar in the moment. They produce radically different outcomes over decades. The discomfort you felt at that stoplight was manufactured. It was the residue of a game you never agreed to play, rules you absorbed without examination, a competition designed to extract money from everyone who participates. The wealthy person in the Camry doesn't feel that discomfort. They've examined the game and rejected it. They've found peace in understanding what actually matters versus what society says should matter. That peace doesn't come automatically. It comes from understanding, really understanding at a deep level how money actually works, how compound interest rewards patience, how depreciation destroys wealth, how the gap between income and spending determines everything that follows. This is what financial literacy means. Not just knowing which accounts to open or which funds to buy, but understanding the principles that govern how wealth accumulates over decades. The car decision is a symptom of that understanding. The person who understands money drives boring cars, not because they have to, but because they see clearly what the alternative costs. If you've watched this video recognizing that your relationship with cars might be costing you more than you realized, that recognition is the starting point for change. There's a video on this channel that breaks down financial literacy from the foundation, the principles that make every other financial decision clearer. The car is just one expression of a larger framework. Understanding the framework changes everything. Your Accord is still in the driveway. It still has those scratches. It still doesn't impress anyone. But now you understand what it represents. Not embarrassment, not failure, not being behind where you should be. Freedom. Compounding wealth, a game you've chosen not to play. The real flex isn't the car that turns heads. The real flex is the bank account that doesn't need anyone's approval to grow. You had it right all along.